Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're really diving deep, aren't we? Right into one of the most persistent, frankly unsettling legends out there, the alleged Dulce Base in New Mexico.
Absolutely. This isn't just, your average shadowy government facility story.
No, not at all. We're talking about whispers of UFOs, sure, but also this place that, look, if even a tiny fraction of the claims are true, well, it could rewrite everything.
Everything we think we know about secret treaties, maybe an alien presence, the limits of classified knowledge, you name it.
Exactly. And our mission here, as always, on the Deep Dive, is to take the sources you give us, research notes, transcripts like today's, and really pull out the key insights.
We want to give you that shortcut, those aha moments, without you having to wade through mountains of information. We're sort of your guides through this, well, often bewildering data.
And today, that path leads straight to the alleged Dulce Base. Let's picture it. Remote high desert in northern New Mexico. Looks empty, right?
Seems that way. Unremarkable.
But according to the lore, it's hiding secrets almost beyond our imagination. An enormous underground complex. A subterranean world that's become this chilling fixture in conspiracy circles.
And this specific deep dive is based on excerpts from a video transcript, Baza Dulce e Zeta Reticuli, from the YouTube channel Tegemity.
Right. So it's drawing on claims, investigations that have been floating around ufology for decades.
And just to be clear, our job isn't to say, yes, this is true, or no, it's false. It's to unpack the narrative as it's presented in this particular source material.
Precisely. So our mission today, we're going to unpack these extraordinary and honestly quite disturbing claims about this elusive base.
We'll look at its alleged origins.
Dig into the really controversial reported activities.
And even touch on the fates of people who try to investigate or, blow the whistle.
So prepare yourself. It's a journey into some deep intrigue, unsettling possibilities, and that constant question, what's really hidden down there? Let's start unpacking.
Okay, so where do these claims even begin? A lot of it seems to trace back to this alleged foundational moment, the so-called 1954 Grid Treaty.
The Grid Treaty. Okay, so this treaty, if it existed, is supposed to be the secret handshake that allowed for these underground bases to be built on Earth.
That's the core claim, yeah. It supposedly provided the, let's say, agreed-upon framework, not just for a base, but for multiple facilities.
And who are the parties involved here? The source suggests it wasn't just, human governments talking to each other.
No. The implication is that this treaty granted extraterrestrial entities a real physical authorized presence right here on our planet, a kind of covert interspecies agreement.
Wow. Okay, so that sets the stage for this whole hidden network idea, a secret agreement as the starting point.
You see that pattern a lot in these kinds of grand narratives, right? It provides that hidden logic.
Exactly. And if you follow that logic, this treaty would be the origin point for a whole network of these covert facilities, globally.
Globally, how many are we talking about? Well, according to independent UFO researchers cited in the source, these aren't just casual observers. They're described as knowledgeable people with serious observation gear.
Okay.
They claim there are about 12 such underground bases operating around the world.
12? That's a huge number. The scale alone is mind-boggling, suggesting this massive hidden infrastructure.
It really is. And out of those 12, the source specifically highlights 2 as the most certain examples.
Let me guess. Dulce Base, our main topic.
Correct. And the other one, Area 51.
Of course, the infamous Area 51. But these aren't just identical bunkers, are they? The source says they have very different specialized functions.
That's right, really distinct purposes. Dulce Base, for instance, is alleged to specialize in wide-spectrum genetic experiments.
Wide-spectrum genetic experiments. That sounds ominous. What does that entail, according to the claims?
It's presented as way beyond just basic research. Think large-scale manipulation of life itself. Claims often mention horrifying hybrid programs, cross-species stuff, studying biology in ways that sound deeply unethical.
And it doesn't stop at genetics, does it? The claims about Dulce get even creepier.
They do. Beyond the genetic angle, there are allegations about general and directed mind control.
Mind control.
Over whom? Over all creatures on Earth, supposedly. But with a chilling emphasis on humanity as the main target. The idea is influencing, maybe even commanding, human thought and behavior globally.
So Dulce is the alleged bio and mind control hub. What about Area 51 then? How does its function contrast?
Area 51, according to this source, is all about engineering. A broadly developed engineering program.
Focused on what kind of engineering?
Advanced flying craft technology, specifically UFO-related tech. So while Dulce is doing the alleged biological work, Area 51 is supposedly where they're reverse engineering captured craft, studying propulsion, exotic materials.
Like anti-gravity, maybe?
Exactly. Studying and maybe even trying to replicate alien technology. That's the division of labor presented in the source.
Okay, this is where it really starts connecting with wider UFO lore, isn't it? Because the source ties these alleged aliens back to a specific place.
It does. Zeta Reticuli.
Zeta Reticuli. Describe that for us.
It's a double star system in the Reticulum constellation, about 39 light-years away. Two yellow dwarf stars, a bit smaller, a bit lighter than our sun, orbiting each other.
And why Zeta Reticuli? Why is that specific system so important in this narrative?
Because it links directly to one of the most famous alleged abduction cases ever, Betty and Barney Hill in the 1960s.
Ah, the Hills. Their story is legendary in ufology. Driving in New Hampshire, the encounter.
Exactly. And it's often cited as key evidence for alien contact. But the crucial part, for the researchers in our source material, is the star map.
Right, the star map Barney Hill drew under hypnosis. He claimed the aliens showed it to him.
He did. Months after the alleged event during deep clinical hypnosis, he recalled this map showing star systems, trade routes, and he drew it.
And the connection is?
The proof, as proponents see it, is that his drawing supposedly perfectly matched the actual layout of the Zeta Reticuli system.
Even though detailed astronomical data wasn't widely available then.
That's the claim. Critics, of course, point to issues with hypnosis, potential suggestion. But for believers, this map was huge. It seemed like confirmation.
Confirmation of what, specifically?
That the grid treaty wasn't just a fantasy, that these bases, like Dulce, really existed, and that the aliens involved came from Zeta Reticuli. Allegedly, all with the okay from some hidden global government.
It's a massive leap, isn't it? From a hypnotically recalled drawing to confirming a secret alien treaty and underground bases.
It is. But that star map became a central piece of evidence underpinning this whole complex narrative.
And it's around this time, as these ideas are swirling, that a key figure emerges, someone who really brought the Dulce Base story into the fringe public eye.
You mean Paul Benowitz?
Exactly. Paul Benowitz. Tell us about him.
Okay, so Benowitz is central, but also very controversial. He's an American scientist, a physicist with a business involved in temperature-controlled devices. But critically, he was also described as a radio and electronics specialist.
And how did he get involved in all this?
It started in the mid-70s. He got interested in that wave of bizarre animal mutilations happening across New Mexico.
Cattle mutilations, yeah. Precise cuts, organs removed, no blood. Very strange.
Extremely strange. And Benowitz, with his scientific mind, looked at it and thought, this isn't predators, this isn't natural.
So he starts investigating the animal deaths, but then his focus shifts.
Right. Pretty quickly, according to the source, he started noticing unusual UFO activity in northern New Mexico, especially near Kirtland Air Force Base.
Not just seeing lights, but something more.
A consistent pattern, apparently, enough to make him think the UFOs and the mutilations were connected, that the UFOs were doing the mutilations.
Okay, so that leads him down the rabbit hole. What did his investigation involve? This is where his electronics background comes in, right?
Absolutely. His work from around 1979 into the 80s was really unique for its time. He wasn't just taking photos, though he did that too using film and photo gear to document UFOs.
What else?
Crucially, he started intercepting radio and video transmissions.
Intercepting them? How?
Using his electronics expertise. He believed he was picking up signals conducted by, as he put it, UFOs belonging to various extraterrestrial races. He thought he'd found their frequencies.
So he's listening in on alleged alien chatter. Did he try to find out where it was coming from?
He did, meticulously, using triangulation, tracking the direction. And the last point of these signals, where they seem to originate or terminate, consistently pointed to a location under Archuleta Mesa.
Archuleta Mesa,
Yeah.
which is right near Dulce, New Mexico.
Exactly. He became convinced there was an underground base there controlling these craft.
How sure was he?
According to the source, incredibly sure. He claimed he was 100% able to identify the radio and video frequencies used for communication between manned extraterrestrial craft and their controllers in the underground Dulce Base.
100% certain. That's a bold claim. He thought he'd cracked their comms system.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Patterns, codes, specific bands. He documented it all. For him, it was scientific data derived from his intercepts.
And did it stop at just listening? the source mentions something even more extreme.
It does. It alleges that Benowitz, being an electronics expert, actually designed equipment that allowed him to communicate directly with the crews of extraterrestrial craft
Communicate directly.
by entering their radio transmission band, effectively figuring out how to transmit back on their frequencies. So moving from passive eavesdropping to alleged two-way conversation.
That's a staggering claim. Active communication with alleged alien craft.
It is. It implies a level of understanding of their technology and protocols that's just way out there.
And there was another aspect to his research, something about tracking people.
Yes, tracking human control via implants. This is another really disturbing layer.
Implants, like alien implants.
That was his belief. He reportedly built sensitive devices to track specific electromagnetic frequencies he thought the aliens were using.
Using them for what?
To control people who had been previously abducted, specifically for the purpose of implanting tiny electronic devices. He called these implants readers.
So a technological method for covert control over abductees. That's deeply unsettling.
It is, and there's a fascinating and quite frankly chilling detail related to this in the source.
What's that?
It claims that later, some independent researchers compared the transmission band of a new RFID chip, the kind used for tracking, potentially for legal human implantation.
Yeah, RFID tags.
They compared the frequency band of that chip with Benowitz's findings on the frequencies used by the alleged alien readers. The results reportedly covered. They matched.
Matched. You mean the RFID frequency was the same as what Benowitz claimed the aliens were using?
That's the implication, which led these researchers to suggest that maybe this RFID tech wasn't entirely human-developed, that it could be an idea and technology of aliens for total control over humans.
Wow. And the abductions were like trials for this tech.
That was the chilling suggestion. Testing the implants. It cast modern tracking tech in a very different, very sinister light.
Okay, so Benowitz gathers all this data, the intercepts, the recordings, the implant tracking. What does he do with it?
He compiles it all into a big report known as the Project Beta report.
Project Beta. And this was substantial.
Apparently, over 2 years, he'd continuously recorded signals of alien intelligence eavesdropped on spacecraft, amassed about 6,000 meters of film evidence.
6,000 meters. That's nearly 4 miles of film. He was certainly documenting something obsessively.
Absolutely. Whatever you think of the claims, the effort was clearly immense.
What were some of the specific findings in Project Beta?
Well, he mentioned continuously receiving video images from alien craft and video screens in the underground base.
Video. So he claimed he was seeing inside.
That's what the report states. Intercepted video suggesting visual confirmation of what was going on down there.
Yeah, what else?
He detailed his finding that implants were inserted into almost every victim abducted by aliens.
Almost every victim.
That's the claim. And he characterized specific types of scars that appeared after implantation, which he believed were related to control and scanning of the abductees.
Okay, specific scars. That's very precise. What about the scale of this alleged implantation?
This is where the numbers get truly astronomical. The source mentions a generator, maybe some kind of analysis tool or program, that worked with Benowitz. It reportedly counted 300,000 types of implants in the USA.
300,000 types or instances.
The source says types, which seems odd. Maybe it means instances or variations, but the next number is even bigger. Approximately 2 million worldwide.
2 million implants worldwide. That paints a picture of mass covert implantation. It's terrifying if true.
Absolutely terrifying. And beyond implants, he also claimed he'd established permanent direct communication with aliens using a certain hexadecimal form of code.
Hexadecimal, like computer code.
Yeah, base 16, a structured, almost digital language. Again, suggesting not just listening, but an active, ongoing dialogue.
But the biggest claim in Project Beta, the one that really fuels the Dulce legend, must be
that by intercepting communications and tracking the signals, he determined the exact location of the underground base, pinpointed it under Archuleta Mesa.
So for Benowitz, all this evidence, the recordings, the films, the abductee stories he gathered, the alleged direct comms, it all pointed to one thing.
Yes. The existence of this massive underground Dulce base used by various extraterrestrial races. He described it as like an intergalactic spaceport hidden right under everyone's noses.
An intergalactic spaceport beneath New Mexico. It's an extraordinary picture he painted.
Utterly extraordinary and deeply disturbing, especially when you consider the next part of the narrative.
Which involves?
Whistleblowers, people claiming to have worked inside the base.
Insiders. Who are they supposed to be?
The source describes them as a significant number of persons who worked in the Dulce Base as specialists, employed by various corporations doing military contract work down there.
So human specialists, scientists, engineers maybe, working alongside or
Yeah.
for the alleged aliens.
That's the implication. And these individuals supposedly came forward, revealed their identities, and shared certain aspects of what was happening there.
With emotion, the source says.
Yeah, unconcealed emotions, suggesting trauma, maybe moral outrage, a real compulsion to expose what they'd seen. Their accounts added that human element to Benowitz's technical data.
And what was the core revelation from these alleged insiders?
Something truly shocking.
Yeah,
Confirmation of a serious armed conflict in 1979.
a conflict. Between who?
Between the American military and aliens from Zeta Reticuli, specifically within the underground base.
A battle, underground, between U.S. soldiers and aliens.
That's the claim. Not just a skirmish, but a serious fight that resulted in a significant number of military casualties.
Human casualties.
Yes, the implication is heavy losses on the human side, potentially special forces soldiers.
And this alleged conflict, did it connect back to Benowitz's claims?
It did, according to the source. It supposedly confirmed Benowitz's accusations about the existence of such a conflict. And crucially, it backed up his claim that the conflict was sparked by human rights violations at the base.
Human rights violations. What kind are we talking about? This connects to the horrific experiments Benowitz alleged.
That seems to be the implication, that the conditions and activities within the base were so atrocious that it provoked a violent response from the human military contingent.
So the battle wasn't just random aggression, but a reaction to atrocities.
Allegedly. And alongside this conflict narrative, Benowitz's testimony, bolstered by the whistleblowers, also included claims about money.
Money. How does that fit in?
Evidence of illegal transfer of money from the American economy to programs of the so-called black budget.
Black budgets. So diverting huge sums of taxpayer money, secretly, to fund this. The base, the experiments, the alien cooperation.
That's the accusation. A massive, covert financial pipeline fueling these hidden operations. It adds another layer of conspiracy, not just alien horror, but financial malfeasance on a grand scale.
Okay, this is getting darker and darker. The source mentions a specific witness Benowitz connected with.
Yes, an abductee,
Glitter.
referred to as Mrs. Hamilton in translation. Benowitz reportedly found her, and she agreed to undergo hypnotic regression sessions.
With whom?
Dr. Leo Sprinkle from the University of Wyoming, a known researcher in these fields. The goal was to access suppressed memories of her abduction experience.
And what did she recall under hypnosis?
She reported being abducted in 1980 with her son and placed in the Dulce Base.
Placed in the base. So she claimed direct experience inside.
Yes, and what she described seeing there, it's probably the most graphic and controversial part of the whole Dulce story.
Go on.
She described exactly what she saw. Horrifying scenes involving people of various ages, apparently held captive, alongside animal remains and parts of human bodies, possibly in vats or containers.
My God. That's unimaginable. Grotesque experiments, hybridizations.
Exactly. It implies horrors on an industrial scale. This description really solidified the nightmarish reputation of the alleged base.
But the source notes that this testimony, however horrific, didn't stand alone for Benowitz, right?
Correct. It emphasizes that when you combine Mrs. Hamilton's account with Benowitz's other data, the electronic intercepts, the alleged video recordings, the supposed direct alien communications,
It formed a complete picture for him.
a complete, horrifying picture of what he called a gigantic UFO fraud. He believed these entities were behind the animal mutilations he'd first investigated and responsible for unprecedented human rights violations against abductees held in the base.
So all the pieces came together for him. The tech intercepts, the witness accounts, the code breaking leading him to believe in this large-scale alien presence underground, abducting and abusing people.
That was his reported conclusion, yes. A massive covert operation with devastating consequences for the victims hidden from the world.
Given the absolute severity of these claims, a secret base, torture, battles, cover-ups, you'd expect a massive official investigation. What actually happened?
Well, this is where the narrative shifts to the official response, or lack thereof, and the alleged campaign against Benowitz himself.
He tried to warn officials, didn't he?
He did. In October 1987, though some sources say his breakdown started earlier, maybe 1985, he became convinced these extraterrestrial races posed a threat to nearby nuclear weapon depots.
A direct national security threat. So he contacted
The Air Force Office of Special Investigations, AFOSI. He laid out his evidence, sounding the alarm.
And Avos I investigated.
They conducted an investigation, yes, but its actual purpose is heavily debated. There's an official report signed by Major Tom Zacharias in October '82, released later under FOIA.
What did the report say?
It details an interview AFOSI conducted with Benowitz at his home near Zeta Base. Special Agent Tody and Jack Miller, a chief scientific advisor for the Air Force, were there.
And Benowitz presented his findings.
He did. His electronic recordings showing high EM activity, his photos, his films, the gear he built to record the high-frequency pulses he believed the objects emitted, he laid it all out.
And the official conclusion?
Miller acknowledged that some kind of unidentified aircraft were indeed filmed. So they didn't deny the visuals entirely.
But
Miller concluded he could not confirm if they posed a threat to the nuclear weapons storage, effectively dismissing the core of Benowitz's warning and the alleged alien connection.
a partial acknowledgement, but ultimately a dismissal of the bigger claims. How does the source interpret AFOSI's actions here?
Very critically, it claims AFOSI's goal was not aimed at investigating the matter, but only at gradually discrediting Benowitz.
Discrediting him? Why?
The source suggests it was a deliberate tactic, confirmed by many reliable sources, especially given Benowitz wasn't just some random guy he had standing in scientific circles. It points to a campaign of marginalization, not genuine inquiry.
So the agency tasked with investigating security threats was allegedly actively undermining the person reporting the threat. That's a huge accusation.
It is, and Benowitz was apparently very frustrated. He even approached Senator Harrison Schmitt of New Mexico, who supposedly also questioned why the Air Force wasn't taking the allegations more seriously.
He was trying every official channel he could.
It seems so. But facing stonewalling, he decided to go public, releasing his big report, Project Beta.
And Project Beta included his estimates for the base's size and population.
Yes, very specific estimates. He claimed the base occupied an area about 3 kilometers wide by 8 kilometers long.
That's enormous. Where exactly?
Right in the central Jicarilla Apache Indian Reservation, west of Dulce Town. And population-wise, based on craft sightings, he estimated 2,000 or more aliens living there.
2,000. A hidden underground city, essentially.
That's the picture Project Beta painted. And because it was so detailed, it got a lot of attention in UFO circles.
Which, according to the source, triggered the discrediting campaign in earnest.
Exactly. A hidden effort to discredit him by AFOC and maybe other agencies. It wasn't open debate. It was covert character assassination.
How to do it?
By manipulating his image. While some supporters felt he was onto something vital, he was increasingly portrayed as paranoid, someone who easily believed things, which supposedly tainted his earlier, more credible work.
The classic attack the messenger strategy. Focus on his mental state, not the evidence.
Precisely. The source points out this is a quite common way to undermine research. Shift the focus to the researcher's sanity, dismiss the findings as delusion.
And this had a real impact on Benowitz.
Devastating, apparently. He suffered a nervous breakdown, described as too heavy and devastating, around 85 or 87. He'd presented this terrifying evidence, and the official line basically reduced it to paranoia, depression, and neurosis.
How did he react after that?
He completely withdrew from public discussion about Dulce, lost interest in UFOs altogether. His drive was broken.
And the official narrative about him today?
Online sources often emphasize his 3 stays in a psychiatric hospital, cementing that image of mental instability and effectively burying his actual research in the mainstream view.
Was it just dismissal, or was there active disinformation involved?
The source alleges active disinformation. It cites former AFOC agent Richard Doty and researcher William Moore, who supposedly admitted in the 80s that they fed false UFO documents to ufologists.
Including Benowitz?
Yes, fabricated reports, altered data, deliberately given to him to confuse his research, push him down wrong paths, and contribute to his mental decline.
That's not just discrediting, that sounds like psychological warfare.
It does. The source asks, why feed him false info? The answer given is simple: to hide the truth. The implication is he'd found something too big, too real, and the only way to stop him was to break his credibility and sanity.
This leaves us with such a tangle of questions, and then there are the deaths.
Right. The story doesn't end neatly.
Yeah.
We're left wondering, was Benowitz just an overzealous researcher who misinterpreted classified projects?
Or was he truly this electronics genius who stumbled onto an unimaginable secret, this underground alien base with horrific human rights abuses?
How can we possibly know? The source itself calls for proper scientific studies to analyze the core information about Dulce impartially, without interference from groups with agendas, to get answers.
And Benowitz himself, his death is mentioned as suspicious.
Yes, he died in Albuquerque under circumstances described as suspicious, leaving those questions hanging.
And his death wasn't the only one that raised eyebrows in this context.
No. His death was reportedly followed by another suspicious one, Philip Schneider,
Philip Schneider, who was he?
another alleged whistleblower. He spent his later years lecturing about his supposed experiences working at the Dulce Base.
What did he claim?
Similar things, direct involvement, witnessing experiments, even participating in that alleged 1979 armed conflict with aliens underground. His accounts were vivid and disturbing.
And there was something eerie about his predictions, wasn't there?
Very eerie. He repeatedly told audiences that he was being watched by the government and other forces, and he explicitly said that if he was ever found dead by suicide, people should assume he'd been eliminated.
He predicted his own potential murder disguised as suicide.
That's what he claimed. A stark warning.
And then what happened?
In 1996, he was found dead. Catheter cord wrapped around his neck. The official ruling was suicide.
Just as he'd warned against believing.
Exactly. The source poses the question, was he just another victim in the war zone of aliens and humans? It leaves that disturbing possibility open.
So we have Benowitz, discredited and dying under suspicion. Schneider, dead by alleged suicide after predicting foul play. It leads back to that chilling question.
Did they cross lines they weren't supposed to? Did they uncover knowledge not meant for civilians? That's the unsettling question the narrative leaves us grappling with.
This deep dive, it's really been something. We've unraveled this incredible, complex tapestry of claims.
A secret treaty, specialized alien bases, genetic horrors, mind control, underground battles.
And then this intense campaign to discredit and silence the main investigator, followed by these suspicious deaths.
It's a narrative that pushes right up against our understanding of reality, of secrets, of power.
And it forces you, listening now, to think, what if? What if even a small part of this is real? What does that imply about our world, our history, our place in the cosmos?
It changes everything, doesn't it? If there's this hidden layer, this secret interaction.
Which brings us to our final thought for you to consider. In today's world, saturated with information, misinformation, disinformation, how do we tell what's real?
Especially when dealing with narratives like this one, secrets so immense they fundamentally challenge our view of reality. How do you discern truth from manipulation?
And maybe the bigger question is, who gets to control that narrative and why? What are they trying to protect, or perhaps trying to hide?